Thank you very much. We'd like to continue with our speakers, and the next one up is speaker number 30. So if you can please give your attention to speaker number 30 as he did you earlier. Oh, excuse me, 31. Thank you.
My name is Tom Camarella. I'm a resident of Culver City, and I'm also a board member of the Southern California Americans for Democratic Action, which resolved Monday night that redistricting should be done in so fair as possible to further the spirit of the Voting Rights Act, and that there should be no steps backward in representation of minorities. In applying this criteria to the maps under consideration, we reviewed the LA area congressional maps and agree with the prior speakers who have rightly pointed out the problem in the SoCal called Inglewood, Southgate, and the West LA downtown district. In Inglewood, Southgate, the airport-adjacent Hawthorne, Lawndale, and Gardena area has been detached, while the district has moved eastward to Bell, which share no interests as communities. We agree that this sets up an undesirable minority versus minority black-brown clash. The West Los Angeles downtown district, which stretches from Topanga and Pacific Palisades to the Echo Park and Pico Union area, has no coherence, let alone community. It has nothing in common ethnically or economically, and we agree that the eastern area should be removed. Since additional residents would need to be added, please consider bringing the greater West LA area together, perhaps by adding back in Santa Monica and Venice, which were together before 2000, and possibly coastal areas further south. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number purple, 32.
It's me. Hello, my name is Missy Kelly. I don't represent any neighborhood council, just a person. And I came here tonight when I heard about the meeting, and I'm sitting here listening to everyone talk about their community, and the only thing that comes to mind is that I live in a neighborhood that somebody once decided to divide without any community input. That means the woman who lives next door to me, 8 feet south of my place, is in a different zip code than I am. Talk about boundaries. She's in a different zip code. She pays $800 more a year for her car insurance. And she gets her mail about 8 hours later than I do, because apparently I live in a better zip code than she does. And we live 12 feet apart. When you draw these lines, it has a real effect on people. I'm just a person. I'm not here to read a resume and tell you how many groups I've joined and everything I've done in my life. Frankly, I got up this morning and I thought that was really good for me. But the reality is that as you district, and it's really easy to do it according to a map and then taking criteria into position. And as I hear people talk about what they have in common, what they don't have in common, what's this or that, I can tell you, I have a whole lot in common with my neighbor that lives 12 feet to the south. But unfortunately, statistically, demographically, economically, and whatever other criteria they use to decide what kind of people are what, I have nothing in common with her. And I say to you, draw these lines and you break communities up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaker number 33, and if speakers number 34 and 35 would come and sit in the reserve seats, we'd appreciate it.
33, yeah. And hi, my name is Fran Reichenbach. I'm with Beechwood Canyon Neighborhood Association. There we go. Okay. I have brought a little map, and I hope you all have had it placed in front of you. Did we get that?
Yes.
Did we get that?
Go ahead.
Very good. Okay, I'm just going to read the bottom part. The Santa Monica Mountains is a single homogeneous constituency with common shared geography, interests, and concerns. For example, we have aircraft and helicopter problems that span the entire mountain area. We have political interest organizations that follow the same boundaries. Separating the eastern portion from the rest will make it harder for us to get heard in Washington, D.C. We've never had any political interests or activities in common with the downtown area. The downtown area has more in common with the East LA area and is a natural fit. We request that you make an even exchange swap of these two areas, giving the Los Feliz area to the West LA Congressional District and the downtown area to the East LA Congressional District. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There may be a question for you.
Just a bit of clarification here.
Yes.
I see with your suggestions that you have along Mulholland. Is that Mulholland Drive itself, or are you using the actual ridge line?
The lines that we've put in there are the red lines, the little tiny sharp red lines. Okay. And they go along Franklin Avenue to the east, and then on the other side of the freeway, around the 5 freeway, they go north to the 5 freeway. Do you see that?
Okay. I was referring to this one. Okay. Say that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Speaker number 34.
Oh, I just wanted
sorry,
to...
Commissioner Dye has a question. Go ahead.
I just wanted to compliment you for... Get stable.
There you go.
I just wanted to compliment you for giving us the population exchange and showing us how we can do that solution, and I just want to encourage other speakers to do the same.
Yeah. And the credit goes to the man who's following me, number 34.
Hi, I'm George Abrahams, President of Argyle Civic Association. We're part of a coalition of 3 neighborhood associations east of the Hollywood Freeway that all want to be part of the Santa Monica Mountains Congressional and Assembly District. I want to propose population exchanges here. Area 1, currently with East LA, brings us to all our other hillside groups. Area 2, pulled from the West LA, goes into the downtown. That joins Hollywood. Area number 3 joins Silver Lake area. You've cut it on Sunset Boulevard, but that community, north and south, uses Sunset Boulevard as an anchor for their community. And the bottom number 3, Chinatown, you could join that again with the rest of Chinatown. You had speakers already. Hollywood speakers, you've already heard them. They want Hollywood joined. The Chinatown speakers want Chinatown joined. And also you have written testimony from the Oaks, one of our other neighborhood associations. They also share opinions. We all want to be part of the Santa Monica Mountains. So here you solve 4 problems with 1 solution.
Thank you. Commissioner Geary has a question. Sir?
Yes.
Sorry.
I just had a very quick question. I'm not sure where Griffith Park falls in here. Is that in the number 1 area?
Yes, it is. It's the red line on the top, and on the right is the eastern boundary of Griffith Park. It goes along the Golden State Freeway. The southern red part is Los Feliz Boulevard.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Speaker number 35.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Richard Loya, 40-year resident of Huntington Park. It's former mayor and health teacher at Huntington Park High for almost 30 years. I'm here to speak about the draft maps covering some of what we call in the southeast, namely the congressional maps for Englewood South, Gate, East Los Angeles Boyle Heights, and Downey Whittier. I urge you to keep the southeast unified. To clarify, the southeast, we usually think of ourselves as Walnut Park, Southgate, Huntington Park, Maywood, Vernon, Cudahy, and Bell. In our community, we have 7 cities that make up the southeast, which are all part of the old San Antonio Rancho from a long time ago. Hence, we have the Southeast Education Coalition, the San Antonio Regional County Library, San Antonio Elementary School. We even used to have the San Antonio Health Department. And now there is talk of the San Antonio Regional Charter School District. Even the Los Angeles Unified School District has put all of our cities into one local district, and those guys don't agree too often. We are 7 cities that make one big family with football rivalries that go back for decades. Our economics are very similar. We're all poor. We are a Latino community. I urge you to keep the Southeast cities unified and not ripped apart. And I thank you for your hard work. And I'm sorry you have to go to 11 o'clock. Thank you.
We're not. Commissioner DeGiulio has a question.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were going to supplement your testimony, but I didn't quite catch all 7 cities, and I'm not sure if our technical team did. If you, oh, they did. I'm sorry, I just can't. You know what? Everybody on my commission knows I can't see that far. So.
Okay. Walnut Park, Southgate, Huntington Park, Maywood, Vernon, Cudahy, Bell, and every now and then Bell Garden says they're part of us too.
Okay, Commissioner Parvenu has a question for you as well, sir. So if
You just mentioned Bell Gardens. What are your thoughts on Linwood to the south?
You know, things have changed, and every now and then we hear from our friends in Linwood, which is now a Latino community also. But you can't go putting everybody into our southeast area. But I think down the line, even if we break away and become our own school district, yeah, there's some interesting possibilities with Linwood.
did you want to follow up at all, or that was fine with you? That was actually okay. That was actually a question. Speaker number 36, please.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Rex Richardson. I'm the president of Long Beach Democratic Club. I live in North Long Beach, and if you don't mind, I'd like to have the North Long Beach map on the screen. So I'm here to speak specifically on behalf of North Long Beach residents pertaining to the State Assembly and State Senate districts, but the State Assembly district would be fine. At the town hall meeting in Long Beach, we attended and we testified that the communities of North Long Beach demographically and historically had a connection with both North Carson and Compton. And according to the census, North Long Beach is over 50% Latino, or over 20% African American, and 9% white. This is consistent with the demographics and social and economic issues of North Carson and Rancho Dominguez. Therefore, it makes sense for us to be joined with the rest of Long Beach, with those as opposed to the rest of Long Beach, particularly Belmont Shore, Naples, those areas which are over 70% white and deal with very different issues. According to the press telegram on June 10th, Commissioner Weber stated we received quite a bit of testimony from Long Beach area, and we wanted to do what was respect the city itself, not divide it, and really respect the integrity of the city and respect the population of the population of its diversity. And all the testimony from North Long Beach that we coordinated stated that our community is more similar to North Carson and Compton than, say, Signal Hill and Belmont Shore, Naples. In fact, the communities are one and the same. The only distinction between North Long Beach and its surrounding neighbors to the north and the west are the city boundaries. To separate us from those communities would be a division of African American, Pacific Islander, and Latino communities, and significantly diminish our ability to elect our own state leaders. Secondly, the majority of our students, our folks actually attend Cal State Dominguez Hills and Compton College. So that neighborhood, just in the corner of that triangle, is called the College Square neighborhood. It's a distinct neighborhood association because those folks live directly adjacent. Their backyard is Compton College. So everything on the west side of the river is historic Rancho Dominguez. It's not Bixby land like the rest of Dominguez. So it's historic Latino family stuff. And I actually own a home in the bottom half of the triangle. So lastly, we we respectfully request an adjustment of placing everything west of the Los Angeles River into the Compton Carson district. This option will unify the historic Rancho Dominguez communities and also the community's interests associated with Compton College and Cal State Dominguez Hills. Thanks.
Thank you.
I have a question, if I could ask a question.
Sure.
Here. Is there a street that you would identify that is the southern boundary of North Long Beach?
Well, Del Amo is the southern boundary, and it's exactly. I'll tell you how many folks are in that area. It's about. I'll tell you right now. I have it with me. Well, 11,000 is west of. There are 11,000 folks west of the river, but historically, Del Amo, which I believe is that line, the kind of faint grayish line.
Okay.
That's That's Del Amo. So there are 112,000 people north of Del Amo. If you've ever been there, north of Del Amo and south of Del Amo are very distinct. You're dealing with very separate issues, different education, different schools. You're dealing with 2 housing projects right on the border. Then south of it, which is Bixby Knolls, which is very distinct from the North Long Beach communities. Ideally, it would be 2 options. If the direction
we understand, but he just wanted your streets. So if you need to submit anything further,
the south is Del Amo, but the historic boundary would be the LA River.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Thank you.
Wait, actually, I do real fast. So let me just see if I can understand this. You're saying you would like to have that area included, that 112,000 people?
I would love to have North Long Beach with Carson,
okay.
North Carson.
So what would you like to take out?
Well, because that's
112,000 people.
Because it's 100,000 people, with what we gave you, it's just the other side of the river. Because I figure it would be easier for you guys to figure out where to put 11,000 people than 100,000 people. If you can figure.
So that little section you're talking about isn't the 112,000.
No, this is 11,000.
The bottom line.
Bottom line is 100,000.
Got it. Thank you. I was like, boy, that's, we can work with smaller numbers, but that's a big number. So thank you for that clarification.
Speaker number 37 and speakers 38 and 39 would come forward in the reserved seats.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Neal. I represent the 9th District of Long Beach, which encompasses the area that we just discussed, about 50,000 residents. But I, too, wanted to echo Mr. Richardson's concerns regarding North Long Beach. There's some very similar issues that we have with the cities of Carson, Paramount, Compton, and the way the lines are currently proposed, you're splitting communities of interest. Putting particularly minority representation at a disadvantage by including us with the communities of the greater Long Beach communities. There are serious economic, socioeconomic issues, differences between North Long Beach and the east side of Long Beach. When we're included with the communities of Belmont Shore and Wrigley and Bixby Knolls, there are quite a challenge as far as educational abilities, educational attainment, and socioeconomic issues. We would be much more comfortable being aligned with the communities of Compton, Carson, and Paramount. I think those are more natural lines. The commonalities are much more the same. The economic issues are the same. The residents of North Long Beach, as the previous speaker stated, attends for the most part Cal State Dominguez Hills, Compton College, as opposed to Long Beach City College and Cal State Long Beach. So I would echo the sentiment of the previous speaker and would propose at a minimum including that the triangle with the 11,000, about 12,000 residents that are west of the river into the Compton Carson Assembly and Senate District. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 38.
Good evening. My name is Dan Presford. We'd like to thank you for giving us an opportunity to speak. I'd like to echo the previous 2 speakers and be in support of those 12,000 residents that traditionally should be just on the east side over there. That should be interrelated to North Carson and Compton and Paramount. We were historically, we were Virginia City. We were annexed in the early 20s. We have been slightly removed for many, many, many years from the downtown. We have many socioeconomic problems that are being handled. Fortunately, we have a great councilman, and he's dealing with them. But we need your help so we can be represented properly in that area. So thank you very much.
We have a question for you, sir.
Sure.
Commissioner Blanco.
So, if I understand, I think I'm hearing two related things. One, just a north-south split, but if nothing else, Paramount with Carson, Compton, sort of.
It's North Carson and Compton, that area.
Right. So in other words, it's
about a 12,000 mix.
Okay. So the second question is, Are you referring to the congressional or the assembly? Because I'm looking at our assembly map.
Assembly and State Senate.
Okay, so in the assembly map, Paramount is actually not with Long Beach. It's with Southgate, Bellflower.
And Lakewood. Small part.
Lakewood. So.
But there is a small part of Paramount that is in that right there. You got it.
Right. So are we looking at assembly there? Yes? Okay. So what is your proposal for this assembly in terms of Paramount? Because
just that we would be aligned in that direction where we could have a representative represent us like we currently have with Mr. Hall and Mr. Wright. If we go back and we're joined back in with Long Beach, our voices will be lost.
Okay, but you're not in Long Beach there. In our maps there, you're not with Long Beach. That's why I'm asking. There's just this one area. So this is not the entirety, just this one piece that you're talking about. Okay, got it.
Anyone else? Okay. Commissioner Dye.
So would you swap Linwood with Paramount?
I'd have to see that.
Yeah.
It's 69 versus 54. That's a possibility.
So you would prefer to have Paramount versus Linwood?
More or less, yeah. I think that would probably be a better mix.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Speaker number 39, and if speakers 40 and 41 would come forward in the reserve seats, we'd appreciate it.
Hi, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak. My name is Floyd Hampton Livingston. I'm a North Long Beach resident, and I've been living in North Long Beach for the past 16 years. The majority of our residents attend Compton College and Cal State Dominguez, that was stated earlier, and Dominguez Hills and Carson, as opposed to Long Beach State and Long Beach City College. So to avoid breaking up these identifiable communities, namely working families, Latino, African Americans, Pacific Islander, and Asians, all of our districts need to be connected to other similar identifiable communities in the region. Therefore, we ask you that you adjust your current Assembly and Senate map slightly to include North Long Beach into the Carson-Compton district. We respectfully request an adjustment of placing everything west of the LA River into the Compton-Carson district. This option would unify the historic Rancho Dominguez communities and the communities of interest associated with the Compton College, Cal State University, Dominguez Hills, and the surrounding neighborhood associations. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 40.
Hi, my name is Michael Hernandez, and I'm a North Long Beach resident as well. I've lived in the area for approximately 20 years. I'm here to speak specifically about the Assembly and Senate lines as well, and I would like to further advocate that the Triangle area also be included in the North Carson-Compton district right there. North Long Beach is historically very, very different from the rest of Long Beach. There's very little in common that we have with the East Side or Belmont Shore or Naples or even downtown. Our voices are often drowned out in that area there. Our socioeconomic status and demographically, racially, it's mostly Hispanic, about over 50% Hispanic, about 20% African American. We have much more in common with even Paramount, Carson, and Compton area. That's all I have for you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker number 41. And if 42 and 43 will come forward and speak or sit in the reserve seats.
Hi, my name is Brian Davis. I am a youth pastor in North Long Beach. I'm on the PTA, and I am the treasurer of the PTA. And I'm on the school site council and our Pentecostal Assembly of the World vice president. I've been living in the North Long Beach for the past 15 years, and I've been dealing with the youth and many of the people in the community. And they mostly identify with the people of Compton and Carson area. They mostly go through the same issues on an everyday basis because I deal with them and I see some of the things that they go through. When I take some of my youth and some of the people that I deal with in the city of Compton and Carson and take them to Signal Hill and Belmont Shore, they feel like they're in a different world. So I know that they mostly relate with the people in Compton and Carson area. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 42.
Here you go. Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Raul Claros. I'm the President of the Latino Coalition. I'm also the Vice President of Pico Union Neighborhood Council, the Park Advisory Board President of MLK Park, which is in South LA. We're here to talk about the 48th Assembly District and the 26th Senate District. We have a prepared statement that I'd like to read in my 2 minutes. We, the Latino Coalition, that makes up a representation of different organizations and their representative, initially see the Assembly, Senate, and Congressional District maps released by the California Citizens Redistricting Commission. We feel that would weaken opportunities for poor and underserved communities in this democratic process. We, the people of California, approve the creation of this commission, hoping for a transparent redistricting process that would help produce fair lines for all people in this great state. The Commission must respect the geographical integrity of our neighborhoods. Commissioners must also respect the Federal Voting Rights Act and draw certain numbers of majority Black, majority Asian, and majority Latino districts where they can elect representatives of their choice. It is imperative that these maps act in accordance with the Federal Voting Act Right of 1965, which protects underrepresented communities from discrimination in the electoral process. Under state law, the VRA is one of the highest priorities that the Commission must apply in drawing the new districts, and the Commission's initial plans falls short of that standard. Also, this plan fails to consider communities of interest that itself identified groups of people with something in common economically or socially. These maps represent a better sweet state of affairs for the underserved and underrepresented communities in California, especially in the LA County. Since the last time the maps were drawn in California, Latino population attributed for 90% of the state's total growth, and California would have lost congressional seats without it. With these maps, the Commission has failed to reflect the Latino population growth by not producing opportunities for increased Latino representation.
Thank you, sir. If you'd like to submit the rest of that, we'll take your written comments.
Right. What we've done is that we've prepared 14 manila folders with a proposed map for both the Assembly and the Senate. We also prepared the initial letter that we proposed that we submitted after our testimony, and also this written statement that probably has about 2 more paragraphs. And in closing, I'd like to just recognize that the Latino Coalition is very sensitive to the needs of the Asian community and the African American community by asking.
Thank you very much,
that
sir.
these districts
We'll
stay
take a look
together.
at all of your material. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you. Are
If
there
you can
any
leave
questions?
it with Ms. Sargis right now.
I see a hand next to you, Commissioner.
Okay, Commissioner Blanco.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And maybe some of this is in the written submission, but I'd like to ask some questions. So I want to first ask you about the congressional district, precisely which one, and what's really helpful for us is getting information about what parts of a district you really feel are not part of a community of interest, and helping us figure out where the line should be. So if you can tell me for the congressional district that you're referring to, which one it is specifically, and what is the community, what are the 2 communities that you feel are too dissimilar in there that you're referring to?
Well, right now at the congressional level, and we, because of the short amount of time since the maps came out, which was last Friday, we went by hierarchy. So we started with the Assembly and the Senate. So you have that information. We're working on the congressional specific lines and our proposal. But we look at Maxine Waters' current district, and you're putting 2 historic communities, the Latino and the African American communities, up against each other to elect one elected official based on the lines that you've drawn. Javier Becerra's congressional district looks decent for the representation that he currently represents, and Karen Bass's district, it looks like the due diligence has been done. But the last thing that we want to do is divide our Black and brown communities, because over the last 10 to 15, maybe 20 years, there's been so much work at the grassroots level for our communities to be able to work together. And I also want to include the Korean community in that, which the 48th Assembly District truly represents as it currently stands, by identifying those 3 communities, which is Korean, African American, and Latino, We don't want to just be a heavily populated Latino or heavily populated Black or heavily populated Korean community. We want to be a multicultural community.
Chair.
What was that?
I will take a close look at this. I'm just really on the assembly. We, as you know, can't really think in terms of we want to keep a certain elected officials district the way it is. That's outside of our mandate. So what would be really helpful is in the assembly district, how would you, given that the population is different now, how would you look at that district in that area? What do you think is wrong with the way we've drawn it? Let me ask it that way. And what would you recommend?
Well, the only reason, to go back to your original opening statement, the only reason that I use those elected officials' names is because that's the way that I've remembered those districts at this point. So forgive me for not knowing the actual numbers at this point. Like I said, our emphasis in the last 72 hours after our town hall meeting that we had on Sunday, after the press conference that we had yesterday morning to inform our communities about this, has been primarily at the Assembly and at the Senate level. What we're trying to do at this point, to answer your question specifically and directly, is to reach out to certain testimonial folks and leaders in the African American community and also in the Korean community. We had some side chat before we even came up here and testified to see how we can start setting up those meetings, because I feel, and this is just my personal opinion, that these three communities have approached these mappings in a very independent, community-based approach. I think at this point we need to start looking at it a more holistic and multicultural approach, to answer your question. So at this time, I can't give you that information, but if you give me about 72 more hours, I'll make sure that I email you, fax you, and draw some stuff up for you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dye, did you have a question? Okay. Thank you. Next speaker.
Thank you.
Number 43. And if speakers 44 and 45 will come forward in the reserved seats, we'd appreciate it.
Okay, Commissioners, you should have a handout for number 43. My name is John Stamreich. I'm a board member of the Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council. And if you could call up on the map the area of San Pedro and the assembly districts. Now, I'm part of a redistricting committee of the neighborhood councils for Northwest, and then our two neighbor ones have also gotten together. Where you see the three assembly districts together, that is the middle of my neighborhood council. The Northwest San Pedro Neighborhood Council has not just been broken into two assembly districts, but has been broken into three. We have one message in San Pedro. I know that a lot of these other cities and things are kind of looking to see which direction you want to go. San Pedrons want to be together. Regardless of whether you're Croatian, Italian, Hispanic, or a redheaded Filipino, German like myself, we all work together. We've been building our community. We work very well with the Port of Los Angeles. Most of our residents either work directly with the port or have worked with them on numerous community projects. And so what I proposed for you is an exchange, just as I've learned from some, when I was speaking to you in Long Beach, to come back and actually do these. And what this does is, in general, just as a quick summary, it actually brings the three numbers closer together. For example, on the left there, the far west side there, you have 467,000 people in there. And what I do is by bringing the most of San Pedro there in with the what's called the IHG to the north there, and exchanging it with Lawndale, which actually calls itself the heart of the South Bay. I work in the South Bay, born and raised in the South Bay. A lot of my friends from aerospace are there. So please take a look at this. This is something that our neighborhood councils are working together on to make sure we have for you. And then real quick, the congressional district looks almost there. You have one little sliver off to the east there. Please unite San Pedro. We need to be together, all of San Pedro together. We are one team, one fight. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm sorry. I thought I saw. Okay. Thank you, sir. Speaker number 44.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Mary Ann Tyler. I've lived in Playa del Rey for 17 years. I'm basically comfortable with the first draft maps of the state Senate and congressional districts that include Playa del Rey, but that is not the case with the first draft map of the state assembly district. As you know, the residents of Playa del Rey and Westchester are citizens of Los Angeles. Our history, our issues, our future are those of LA. The draft congressional and Senate districts recognize this fact and include large portions, percentage-wise, of Los Angeles. Those percentages give LA residents the numbers they need to be heard in those districts. I don't believe that will be true in the first draft Assembly district. Playa del Rey and Westchester are percentage-wise a very small portion of that district, and as a result, I am very worried that our voices will be diminished. I am also deeply concerned that the first draft Assembly district separates Playa Vista and a portion of the Bayona wetlands from us. What happens in Playa Vista profoundly affects what happens in the wetlands in Playa del Rey. We are very much of a piece, and we should remain together. Those are only my concerns for the northern boundary of the draft Assembly district. If time allowed, I'd also discuss the strong commonalities I feel with the beach cities to the south of us, from El Segundo to Redondo Beach and Torrance. But I know I don't have that kind of time. So I will sum up by saying that I'd like to see the northern boundary of the first draft Assembly district move north to something akin to the northern boundary of the current 53rd Assembly district. I have found that to be a good fit that allows us to be heard as citizens of LA and to work together with the beach cities to the south of us on the many concerns and issues that we share. Thank you so much for your time and all your heavy lifting.
Thank you. Speaker number 45.
Hello, my name is Cara Robin, and I'm a resident of Westchester in the city of Los Angeles. Like the speaker before me, I'm pretty personally pleased with the preliminary Senate and congressional maps. My issue is with the Assembly District draft. Do you have that up? Because my community, once again, will be split off from the rest of the city of Los Angeles, as it was in the last redistricting. I won't be linked to my own city, only to independent cities. And however the districts are redrawn, for fair representation, I think Westchester needs to be with other cities in the city of Los Angeles, other communities in the city of Los Angeles. I've lived in Westchester since I was 3 years old, taking maybe a 16-year hiatus around there. And I always consider the West Side my community of interest. My family's doctors are in Playa Vista and Marina del Rey. My mother's been a volunteer at Marina del Rey Hospital for 32 years. My daughter went to preschool in Venice and K through 12 in Santa Monica. She just graduated from LMU in Westchester. I worship in Mar Vista. My entertainment and dining are done almost exclusively in Westchester, Marina del Rey, Venice, and Santa Monica, as is my shopping for grocery and healthcare products in stores that offer a plethora of organic products and alternative medicines. I had a business in Venice for 6 years before relocating to Santa Monica, and my clientele is from the west side of Los Angeles. But I think the clearest examples of communities of interest are our local newspapers. The Argonaut, my newspaper, lists on its masthead as servicing the communities of Marina del Rey, Playa del Rey, Venice, Santa Monica, Westchester, Playa Vista, and Mar Vista. The Daily Breeze, on the other hand, is a South Bay beach cities down to LA Harbor. I think these newspaper makes it clear that Westchester belongs with her communities of interest, adjacent communities that are mainly in the city of Los Angeles and share a city council district. Thank you. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Next speaker, speaker number 46, or 46. And if 47 and 48 would come forward in the reserved seats, we'd appreciate it.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Bobby Jean Anderson. I am a resident of South LA, actually what was the 40th Assembly District and also the 35th Congressional District. I'm here to say this evening I testified at the LA City Council hearing, and we asked that you keep the cities between Watts, South LA, West Adams, Harvard Heights, and the Figueroa Corridor together, to keep that group together. And we're pretty pleased that you accomplished what we asked, basically. But there's one other thing that we wanted to see happen, is that while we want to see cultural diversity, we also think that economic diversity is important. And if the link of the Figueroa corridor be extended to downtown, where we have LA Live, we have Staples Center, that's where the economic engine is. And we think that if that part could be included in the district, it would be a plus and something needed. Also, just piggybacking on, since I am in the 35th Congressional District, I agree with all of the previous speakers that stretching the 35th Congressional District from Inglewood to Southgate is really like a misnomer. There is no community interest there at all, and we would ask that you would take the Congressional District for the 35th back west. And I thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Speaker number 47.
Good evening. I'm Jacqueline DuPont Walker, President of Ward Economic Development Corporation and Chair of Social Action for the Amy Church 5th District. Thank you, staff. Thank you, commissioners. We gathered on Saturday with the African American Redistricting Collaborative, and over 120 people both reviewed and reacted to the maps. We are pleased that the CRC maps have acknowledged our evidence showing that concentrating African Americans in majority districts is inappropriate in this context. However, we're just as concerned that in maintaining sub 50% districts, the CRC does not dismantle community organizations and neighborhood associations that engage in political issues in the area. The residents of these longstanding communities have become effective in working alliances and institutions that engage the political process and hold elected officials accountable. The delicate web of civic and social connections that emerge in socially economic depressed areas help form the foundation for workable participatory democracy in the larger jurisdiction. With the very costly investments of time and effort on the part of residents to begin and to cultivate these groups, a recognized community of interest in this area should not be tampered with lightly. Asset rating serves to disconnect these existing communities of interest. In the Inglewood District, for example, the removal of the collection of neighborhoods around LAX who have organized around noise pollution, traffic congestion, living wage jobs, and which represents an economic engine is troublesome. We ask that you revisit the shape, understanding the desire for a coastal district, and would suggest a solution. One solution is to situate the Inglewood Congressional District closer to the original form with a greater connection to LAX and Westchester. The lost population from the coastal district can be made up by taking more of the port area. Further, one can merge the Carson Commerce Congressional District with a portion of North Long Beach. Thank you.
Thank you. We have questions here.
Okay. Point of disclosure, I know Mrs. Jackie DuPont Walker. Both yourself and Mrs. Alice Hoffman mentioned LAX. Can you identify some other assets or resources that you feel are important to the community of interest in that part of Los Angeles?
Absolutely. With Loyola Marymount and the community of schools, which actually serves the low-income area and would help students and the communities that are attached to that area be able to achieve education. With LAX, we're very important about, it's very important to consider the large concentration of jobs for African Americans, living wage jobs, as well as the opportunities for entrepreneurship that don't come. As you know, the areas around suffer from the issues of LAX, and it's better to have one representative who hears and understands both the pluses and the negatives and can negotiate on behalf of those communities.
Thank you. Speaker number 48, and if speakers 49 and 50 will come to the reserved seats, we'd appreciate it.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Kareem Creighton. I am a consultant for the African American Redistricting Collaborative. I also was a 5-year resident of downtown LA until fairly recently. I wanted to continue what I hope are comments that are helpful in talking about the plan that you all have devised. Like the previous speaker, I want to commend your decision to take a different approach than majority control of the districts that we discussed earlier in South LA. However, we do want to emphasize, I think, the importance of thinking about how the configurations that you've had in place either move away from the traditional core of the districts that we thought we presented in our initial plan, but also that they not try to create what we think, and I think you've heard from the community, undue, unnecessary clashes between communities that don't necessarily exist in the same traditional communities of interest, but that each have, we think, important concerns both as communities of interest, but also from a federal law perspective, the Voting Rights Act. And we think, let me just concentrate on 2 points in the short time that I have. First, the Inglewood district, we think, really unnecessarily moves too far east and goes across the 110 to put two communities that don't have a great deal of commonality with respect to either their political participation or their social activism. We also think that that raises a number of concerns with respect to the representational interests that they have, and that's both a concern from the perspective of the state law community of interest perspective, but also the Voting Rights Act perspective as well. Second, I want to just make a short point about the coastal district. It seems to us that the districts that have been created in South LA have basically been squeezed for the purpose of creating a coastal district. And we agree that there ought to be an interest that is represented in on the coast, but it shouldn't be done at the expense of moving so many places out of their traditional zones. And so we would suggest, in fact, that you take more space around the ports near San Pedro and allow those areas farther west of the existing district in Inglewood to be incorporated in the existing congressional district map that you have.
Thank you. Commissioner Parvenu has a question for you.
I also know Mr. Creighton, and thank you for your testimony.
Sure.
Okay, you mentioned that Inglewood district, that's sort of the middle area of the city, extending too far east. By moving LAX into that district or an adjacent one, that does split up that coastal area with Santa Monica to the north and the South Bay cities to the south. Is that the recommendation that you're...
Just as a reminder, we actually created in our proposal a district that would allow Santa Monica to be a part of the coastal district. Admittedly, it was somewhat more narrow than the one that you all have created, but we don't think that that gets in the way of joining communities that we think and that you all have agreed have the shared interest of being on the coast. But we think that the areas adjacent to LAX, which are populous, could be swapped for the areas in and around the Southgate area. And we think that would better reflect the existing communities of interest there.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And, of course, we have looked at quite a number of iterations of our own, let alone those that have been submitted. But if I recall correctly, I thought I saw a district among your materials that included Compton, Carson, and Rancho Palos Verdes.
That wasn't our proposal, ma'am.
I just wanted to make sure.
Indeed. In fact, we were surprised to see that pairing together when we saw it, but it was not.
I could have confused it with anyone. So, okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next speaker, 49. I understand that the community here gets my point. So.
Good evening. My name is James Harris. Wrote my notes right quick. So I've lived in and worked in South Los Angeles for 48 years. I've worked with many organizations in the community throughout the years. During my tenure as chair of the Southwest Neighborhood Council, which includes Vermont Knolls and Westmont, we were part of a regional coalition that had to come together to put pressure on elected officials representing the airport and surrounding areas to get a soundproofing program and some accountability about late night flights overhead. This model was later duplicated nationally to help other communities tackle the same issues we had with the airport here. Looking at these draft maps, it looks like this will weaken the coalition and reverse some of the gains these communities gain. Secondly, the maps look like black and brown communities are being pitted against each other while other communities are enjoying status quo. A major concern for me is the natural access to jobs at the airport for African Americans who have historically suffered joblessness twice the rate of other communities. The airport is the largest employer of African Americans. Again, these jobs are a result of the representation that is in touch with the African American community. I think when configuring these maps going forward, some of the criteria that should be looked at are how the configuration strengthens communities instead of weakening them. When the coalitions that exist, what the coalitions that exist, what impact does the reconfiguration have on them? If it is negative, then other alternatives should be considered. Finally, I am not sure candidates of our choice can get the representation that we need with this draft. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, could I ask the speaker a question very quickly? We've heard this from a couple speakers about the neighborhoods around the airport. Do you have an idea of kind of what those boundaries are? I'm assuming it's not maybe as clearly defined as like a city, but maybe does it go up a certain distance north, a certain distance east? So I'd just like to have a reference point for those communities.
Westchester.
All of Westchester. Okay.
And kind of move out of the El Segundo area.
Westchester. Okay. So, okay.
Excuse me, sir. Another commission member has Commissioner Ball.
So this is a question that I've been really having to think about over listening to the last few speakers about this area. In the earlier presentation by the African American Redistricting Coalition, when we were looking at this Inglewood district and a couple of the other ones, above and below it, I don't know if you remember, there was a long discussion about coalition districts, and the numbers then were about 35% Latino, 35% African American, and I think, I can't remember what the Asian numbers were. And I didn't hear this same concern about pitting against each other. And why now is it being considered? Because those were also maps that, were not a majority for anybody. So I'm curious why now this has come up.
Well, my concern is when you take that eastern boundary and put it over in the South Gate, that doesn't have much in common with Inglewood. That's setting a collision course in the future.
I happen to know Mr. Harris, too, from his work along Century Boulevard. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Speaker number 50.
Good evening, Commissioner. A special acknowledgement to Commissioner Parvano. Here as an advocate on behalf of Congressional District 35. What happens is, to kind of address what the last person said, you are taking the assets out of the community. You're taking Westchester High out. You're taking Loyola Marymount out. You're taking Otis Parsons out of the area. So in any population, you need to have your populace educated. So you are replacing that with low manufacturing jobs. Also, if you you keep the district as it with the new maps, you're going to lose used satellites north of Grumman, LAX, the Hawthorne Airport. So what you're going to do is all those high-paying jobs, those educational components, what are they going to be replaced with? Right now, you have a rail line coming down Crenshaw that's going to feed into the airport. So right now, we need to keep the airport in the district. So just as a natural continuation. So it's all about linkage. You don't want to lose the schools in that area. What would they be replaced by? You don't want to lose the manufacturing. What would they be replaced by? We've already lost one university, a Pepperdine University, that was on Vermont that went to Malibu. Where are the educational facilities? On the east side, the natural, and I don't want to use the word boundary, but the natural, say, river should be Alameda. That way you have two communities of interest having a commonality in Alameda. So it should still go west, and the airport should still be included in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 51.
Good evening. My name is Michael Culkin. I'm a 16-year resident of the Santa Clarita Valley. I'm going to do something a little unusual here and admit right up front I'm a partisan Democrat, actively involved in politics in my area. My intent here is not to sway you to any partisan position or point of view. I know that's not your mission. Just as you'll take everything I have to say with a grain of salt, based upon my background, I ask that you do the same for another Santa Clarita Valley resident, who has come to you before at previous hearings, and I believe will again yet tonight. Presenting maps on behalf of the Coalition of Suburban Communities for Fair Representation was Scott Wilk, who introduced himself as a member of the Santa Clarita Community College Board of Trustees, which he is. He failed to mention some other partisan affiliations he's been involved in, including currently serving as an elected member of the County Republican Central Committee, former district director for Republican Congressman Buck McKeon, former chief of staff for Republican Assemblywoman Paula Boland, and a past candidate for Assembly in the Santa Clarita Valley. It comes as no surprise that the maps Mr. Wilk suggested contained districts with convoluted shapes that protected the Republican majority for many of his past Republican employers and ensured a safe Republican seat for him to run for in the future. I ask the Commission to consider the points I've outlined when considering the suggestions made by Mr. Wilk and his handpicked coalition of suburban communities for fair representation. I am proud to be a California Democrat. I would hope that Mr. Wilk is as proud to be a Republican. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Speaker number 52.
Good evening. Chair Filkins-Weber, Commissioners, I'm Rosalind Gold. I'm Senior Director of Policy Research and Advocacy with the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials. That's the NALEO Educational Fund. And I just want to echo the many thanks that you've heard from other speakers about your dedication and your commitment to ensuring that all Californians have a strong and effective voice during the redistricting process. It's very much appreciated. As an organization that works to achieve full Latino participation in California's democracy, we have to express that we have some deep concerns about the overall maps prepared by the Commission. When we look at the last decade, there has been significant growth of the Latino population in the state. Latinos accounted for 90% of California's population growth over the last decade. Yet when we look at the maps, we have serious concerns about whether that growth is reflected in increased opportunities for Latino political participation. Using one measure of Latino effectiveness, which is districts that are at least 50% citizen voting age population for Latinos, we see there's been either stagnation in the numbers of at least 50% Latino CVAP districts at the assembly level and at the congressional level, or at the state senate level, there's actually been a reduction of such districts. And we would like you to really take a look at why has that occurred when we have had such a significant growth in our populations. We know one of the other things you're looking for is specific comments and questions and issues about neighborhoods and communities, and members of our community will be testifying, and we will also be providing written testimony to the effect. We urge you to review all that and think about all that in the context of the overall opportunity for Latino political progress in the state. Thank you again for all your hard work and dedication.
Thank you.
Just a disclosure, I have known Ms. Gold for a very long time, and I've worked with her on many issues.
Commissioner, could I ask a question as well?
Oh, sure.
Oh, and I also know Ms. Gold from, down here, sorry, again in the kids' table. I did mention I do know Ms. Gold since the 90s, actually. I think that's around when we first met. In terms of additional information or testimony that NALEO might be providing, or affiliated individuals and groups might be providing, do you anticipate anything related to evidence of discrimination or racially polarized voting that you might be bringing forth before the Commission?
I know that there are some racially polarized voting analyses being done. We would not be doing that. I think some of my colleagues may be able to address that. We will be talking about the barriers to Latino political participation and the fact that they still remain. We worked very closely with the Latino community during the reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act in 2006, and we were able to document in California and other places that Latinos still face barriers to participation. And yes, we will be addressing that in our testimony.
Ms. Gold, one more question.
One of the things, You mentioned the stagnation in assembly and congressional districts in districts that are over 50% CVAP Latino. Putting aside for now the congressional, so two questions. One, are you referring right now to Los Angeles or statewide?
We're talking about the total number of districts statewide, and, I can give some examples from both the congressional and the state assembly level of where there are districts that were 50% CVAP under existing maps but have had their CVAP reduced. On the congressional level, in the San Bernardino area, there's a district that has had its CVAP reduced from over 50%. Essentially, we've sort of lost a Latino effective district in the Los Angeles County area if you use 50% CVAP. We know that you have created some additional districts in Congress, one in the Northeast San Fernando Valley, and I believe one has also been created in San Diego and Imperial County area, but we believe you could have created those additional districts. Matter of fact, they should have been created 10 years ago by the state legislature during its redistricting. You could have created those districts and maintained the ones in San Bernardino County and in LA County as well.
So my question was actually about LA for
Sure.
you, which is when you look at the population, LA has lost the equivalent of a 1.4 assembly district as a county. It's actually lost over one assembly district. How do you factor that into your analysis?
Well, it may have lost overall population, but the Latino community is very strong. And we would just urge you to look at some configurations that would allow there to remain at least the same number of Latino CVAP seats. So you're right, the population overall total has been lost, but the Latino community is still very strong in many of those assembly districts.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Speaker number 53, and if speakers 54 and 55 would come forward in the reserved seats, we'd appreciate it.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Stephen Ochoa. I'm the National Redistricting Coordinator for MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund. It is MALDEF's opinion that these first draft maps are not in compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act. You've heard this from others already, and you will hear this from other communities as you continue your second tour throughout the state. The 2010 census tells us that Latinos are 38% of California's total population. And Latinos made up 90% of California's total population growth since the 2000 census. Yet these first draft maps of the Commission's state assembly, state senate, and congressional districts show no increases in Latino representation. How did this happen? Understanding the redistricting process, the only conclusion I can come into is that the Commission did not prioritize compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act as mandated by federal and state law. The initial analysis of the Commission's current, the initial maps, the Commission's maps and the benchmark maps, the current maps, tells the following. The Commission drew 13 Latino opportunity districts in the state, which is the same number as the current Assembly plan. The MALDEF plan submitted to you on May 26th contained 18 Latino opportunity districts. The Commission drew 5 opportunity districts on the state Senate level. The Senate plan eliminated 2 Latino, your Senate's plan eliminated 2 Latino opportunity districts compared to the current benchmark, which has 7, 6 of which are over 50%. The Commission's draft removed 2 Latino opportunity districts. By contrast, MALDEF created a plan with 10, 9 of which were over 50% Latino CVAP. The Commission drew 6 Latino opportunity districts on the congressional level. And one of which was over 50% Latino CVAP, but was married with a large African American population. Therefore, it is not quite determined which community would be able to elect their candidate of choice. The MALDEF plan, by contrast, contained 11. I urge you to revisit the MALDEF map submitted to you on May 26, and specifically the districts identified as Section 2 on all 3 plans as a first step towards remedying these maps' your map's effective minority vote dilution.
Thank you, Mr. Ochoa.
I have a disclosure that I know Mr. Ochoa.
Commissioner Anchetta.
The same question that I posed to Ms. Gold earlier. Will you be supplementing your previously submitted maps with any additional information either related to either totality of circumstances, discrimination issues, or racially polarized voting?
We're certainly, in terms of what I would call the qualitative information, we have still partnered with NALEO to continue our work going up and down the state, working with community groups, informing them to come and testify. And I have heard various stories of their perceived discrimination. So first of all, we are encouraging people to still testify, of all races, creeds, and colors. And of course, we're always looking at election analysis, and there's quite a lot of election history to go through to analyze and put together.
Commissioner Galamas-Malloy.
Mr. Ochoa, I am wondering, for purposes of this hearing, if you have any particular regions of Los Angeles that you would like to draw our attention to, or statewide?
Sure. For examples, in LA County, the general pattern on all three maps seemed to be preserve the coastal communities, preserve the city of Long Beach, and then the minority communities all in the center of the county seem to be collapsed into each other into similarly over-concentrated districts, or to districts where or communities who have traditionally enjoyed their own opportunity districts to be in competition with each other, as previous people have stated. So the consequence of focusing only on communities of interest, I'm not discounting its importance, but it does tend to over-concentrate like-minded communities together. So it does create the inadvertent packing phenomena. Other parts of the state, I certainly want to draw attention to Orange County, where the commission in all three maps separated the traditional cores of Santa Ana from central Anaheim. On the assembly level, there currently exists a Section 2 effective district. On the Senate and congressional levels, those communities, along with Eastern Garden Grove, also form the basis for effective or Latino opportunity districts that have elected Latino candidates of choice for over a decade. Many, many others.
Which I'm sure you'll let us know about later, right, Mr. Ochoa?
I have a little analysis game.
Terrific. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I'm sorry, Commissioner Parker.
Can you speak briefly for the central part of Los Angeles with about the current Latino CVAPs and the percentages that we currently have on the maps there? What are your thoughts about what the scenario currently exists is?
As I instruct community members in our workshops, the Voting Rights Act basically states that sometimes you may need to draw majority-minority opportunity districts to avoid minority vote dilution. So if there are situations where a minority group can control, satisfying all the rigorous jingles prongs, if there exists an ability for the minority group to sufficiently control two districts where and they are drawn into one, that could be considered a minority vote dilution. So there were in Los Angeles County a number of districts that MALDEF drew that increased. There were Section 2 districts. On the assembly level, I think we added one in the South LA to Koreatown, along with one from the southeast cities to the Port of Long Beach. On the congressional level, and then we also added one on the Senate level since we started from a nesting base in that area. So the challenge, and then of course we attempted configurations where we also attempt to preserve the African American voices, because we certainly don't want to silence another minority's chance to elect candidates of choice. So yes, I am the proud author of the Palos Verdes to Compton district, because I would prefer an attempt to preserve African American voices. As the previous community members have said, they too want their voices heard, and they deserve it.
Any other questions of Mr. Ochoa? Thank you. We're on purple. Just for anybody else that's joining us, we don't want there to be any confusion. We do have two sets of numbers. We have purple and we have white. So you might have, we're working on purple right now. So purple 54, excuse me.
May I request Congressional Map 37 District, the 37th Congressional District? LBPRT?
PRA.
Okay. Thank you. My name is Ophelia Hilliard. I'm a 49-year resident of the lovely, diverse city of Long Beach. Good evening, Commissioners. Ladies and gentlemen, I come before you tonight because I have a concern about the proposed district maps for the congressional districts that contain the city of Long Beach and the adjacent map with the cities of Carson and Compton. And I live in Long Beach. I will get right to the point. The LBPRT area map, with the addition of the region that includes the Port of Long Beach, goes part of the way to bringing the port-related transportation industry and the communities of interest that lie along those corridors into a logically aligned congressional district. Unfortunately, portions of those two maps I mentioned before should be one map, one that includes Long Beach and its port, coupled with the cities of Carson, Compton, and Signal Hill. Transportation is one of the major factors connecting these cities' residents as community of interest. With the Alameda Rail Corridor, based in Compton, and the Intermodal Cargo Transit Facility in Carson, which connects the ports of LA and Long Beach with the Alameda Corridor. No wonder Commissioner Blanco was thinking about that at the Northridge hearing, where she asked Q2 and CRC Attorney Brown this. We had been going heavily on communities of interest, and I thought that's what we had agreed at the beginning of the session, that we go by neighborhood cities, COI and obvious population. But if you don't elevate COI, then where do you start? Ladies and gentlemen, please, I urge you to take your colleagues' advice and strongly consider a redraw that keeps Carson and Compton with Long Beach. Our frustration is that we've worked so hard to form alliances to advance issues that directly affect us. For instance, Compton and Carson share our pollution concerns regarding the Alameda Corridor. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. We do have one question.
Sorry, can I ask a question? So I heard the Compton Carson with Long Beach and the Long Beach port, but to take out the LA port, I mean, so you're switching kind of one port for the other?
No, actually, the original map at the meeting in Long Beach, as I understood it, it had the original 37th Congressional District. It did not include the port. It had this strip that was going to Orange County under, I believe, Rohrabacher. But anyway, the number of people, actually, if we kept with the original map that was, if you just dropped down with the Carson and Compton as it had been included, the 155,000 that were the numbers that you had to fix, 54,000, it actually, including the ports, came to that number. So then to see the redraw of where we've pushed to the east, we don't have any, there's no shared issues with the current redraw. The prior communities, we shared interest as far as the Alameda Corridor, the port pollution. We've just been working for so many years on the ships and the types of fuel that they use, and I mean all those sorts of issues. All of our communities, due to the increased truck transportation and all of that up and down that corridor, we have such alliances, and we've worked so long and so hard against ineffective representation that it would be a shame to dilute our alliances at this point.
Thank you. Any other questions? We do need to take a 2-minute technical break issue here. So